Hello everyone, this is Moses from Wilona's Cave. In this episode, we are going to continue the journey of Hackleswell. This episode will be a bit different from the previous episodes, such as the dice rolls will not be shown except in text, and no explanation narrative will be included. It will play out like a short story, much like a recent video of mine of a witch hunter in a swamp. The link to that video should be showing up right now. Before we begin, I'm going to do a very quick recap of the last episode. Hackleswell is under a lake in a type of lair or dungeon, and he just passed all the tests the witch had for him, and now he can see the mystical entrance into the witch's lair. Now with all that said, let's begin. In front of Hackleswell in the distance, he can see the mystical entrance of the witch's lair. He has stepped through this entrance in the past and knows that it will take him to another undisclosed location. He walks up to the entrance and steps through the opening. With one step, he is then transported into the witch's den. The smell of earth, moss, and a bit of rot fills the air. He can see the candle on the table in front of him, but is wary to simply walk up to it. His senses were correct, as the witch appears in the corner of the room. She is looking at the candle, and then with a grin, moves her head in a tilting fashion, looking directly at Hackleswell. "Hackleswell, so nice to see you again," the witch says, still with an evil grin. Hackleswell looks away from the witch and back at the candle. The witch notices this and quickly states, You must remember what our deal was, old mallard." He looks downward and takes a deep breath and replies, "You said you would bring my daughter back to me. The only thing you have done is bring her back to me in my nightmares." "Oh, I think you are leaving something important out. Like our deal that you didn't uphold?" The witch walks up close to the candle and continues, "You sacrificed your blood, Hackleswell, which is in this very candle, to create an agreement that you would hunt the one that betrayed me. But now it seems that I have two betrayers." He replies, "You garnered my agreement to this pact when I was most vulnerable. When I agreed to your deal to hunt the one who betrayed you, you did not mention till after I agreed that you wanted me to take the newborn child away from the one that betrayed you. And? So what if I did?" She quickly and angrily responds, "A deal is a deal." He grabs his sword, and as he does, the witch looks at him, smiles, and laughs while waving her finger at Hackleswell. You are in no position to go against my power and will. You are old now, Hackleswell, and I sense that you have not had bountiful sleep in a very long time. I even smell the scent of a sleeping poison coming off your breath." Hackleswell slowly releases his grip on his weapon. "You are old and weak, Hackleswell," she adds. At this moment, she senses a powerful magic radiating from him. "I sense something magical on you, Hackleswell." "I do not have anything magical on me," he responds. "You are not just old and weak, but also a horrible liar." She smiles, extends her arm out, and twists her arm. At that moment, Hackleswell becomes stiff, levitates, and is flipped upside down, consequently causing the genie coin to fall out of one of his pockets. While Hackleswell was still levitating upside down, the witch walked closer to him, carefully keeping her eyes on the coin that fell. He knows how important that coin is due to him having one wish left from the genie. He tries to think of anything to take her eyes off of that coin. While hanging upside down, the wooden sunflower that he made into a necklace slips out from under his clothes. It was now hanging from his neck over the witch's head. He immediately thought that she will think that this was the magical item that he possessed. So he quickly reacts and requests help with intuition. It did not matter what he requested help with. It was just to get the sunflower to react and gain the witch's attention. Right when the witch bends down and reaches for the coin on the floor, the sunflower hanging from Hackleswell's neck reacts and starts to speak. The witch stands up quickly without the coin in her hand. Her face is now a few inches away from the sunflower that was not only speaking, but was shimmering with a bright blue hue. "Curious," she remarks. "What type of witchcraft is this? It takes powerful magic to enchant the voice of the ones that are gone into an object." She grabs a sunflower and pulls it off of his neck, breaking the chain that it was hanging on. As the sunflower was still speaking, she looks at him and asks, "Is this not the voice of your daughter?" While still hanging upside down, he nods his head. She slowly walks away from his levitating body. She seems alarmed and confused and says, "I have never known anyone powerful enough to do such an enchantment. I always thought it was impossible, enchanting an object with the voice of the dead," she whispers to herself as she stares and listens to the wooden sunflower in her hand. She then spins around quickly, reaches out her hand, chants out a spell, and Hackleswell falls onto the floor. He screams and coughs in agony. The air within his lungs begins to leach out of his mouth. He cannot inhale. He is suffocating. The witch yells out in a dark and evil tone, "You lied to me, you little fowl. You said your daughter was dead. It is impossible to enchant an object with the voice of the lost." Laying on the floor, struggling to breathe, he begins to panic. While rolling around, his head lays next to the coin. He notices it. He reaches out with all of his remaining strength and grabs the genie coin. He quickly rubs it in between his fingers and the genie appears. At that moment, Hackleswell felt the pressure come off of his chest and throat, and he took in a huge inhale. "A genie!" she proclaimed, dropping the wooden sunflower out of her hands. The genie looks at Hackleswell lying on the ground and gasping for air, and then looks at a vicious-looking witch. "You have a genie?" she yells. The genie then looks and focuses on the candle, knowing that it has dark magic attached to it. The genie asks the witch, "Is that the blood-pact candle between you and Hackleswell?" The witch responds, "Yes, that is the blood candle, which is made of his blood." "Have you asked any wishes yet, Mallard?" she asks. Hackleswell, still trying to catch his breath, speaks out and responds, "Yes." "How many wishes have you asked for?" she asks. Hackleswell finally catches his breath and responds again, Two wishes." Her face lights up, still with her evil grin, and then she says, "I'll make you a deal. If you use your last wish to wish for that newborn child to come into my possession, I will not only spare your miserably lonely life, but also extinguish the candle, rendering your pact paid in full." Hackleswell is disgusted by the deal, but then she adds, "You will no longer be tormented by your daughter in your nightmares, and you can peacefully continue your journey to the waterfall to the west." The genie looks at him lying on the floor, awaiting his response. Hackleswell looks into the eyes of the genie and then slowly lowers his head. Hackleswell thinks to himself that he can have the curse taken off of him, and after that he can try to leave with the wooden sunflower, the genie coin so the witch won't take it to get her own 3 wishes, and also he will try his best to take the teleported newborn child as well, hopefully fleeing the witch's lair with all 3 things. He looks up at the genie and then at the witch and says, "I agree to your proposal." The genie looks confused and a bit horrified that Hackleswell would wish for such a thing. The witch, on the other hand, is ecstatic. "Oh, wonderful! Finally, I get my revenge!" she proclaims. Hackleswell quickly puts the coin in his pocket, stands up, and looks at the genie. The genie squints his eyes while looking at him. He then says, "Genie, I wish for the newborn child that the witch bargained with me to retrieve for her, to be teleported here in this lair." The genie, with disappointment on his face, grants his final wish. A whistling sound can be heard in the distance, and it is getting louder and louder. and then all of a sudden a baby appears on the top of the table next to the candle. The baby is crying. Hackleswell's heart sinks as he hears the baby cry. The witch claps her hands together and laughs with glee as she walks up to the baby. She then reaches out and picks up the baby. "Oh, aren't you precious?" she says while looking into the baby's crying eyes. During this time, the genie looks at Hackleswell with disgust, but notices that he is in total distraught. Hackleswell quickly looks into the eyes of the genie. He is trying his best to convey the plan he has to grab the baby and escape the witch's lair. Hackleswell, while looking into the genie's eyes, opens his eyes wider to signify something. He then looks at the baby in the witch's arms and then back at the genie. Although the genie cannot grant any more wishes to Hackleswell, he does understand that he wants to take the baby and most likely flee. The genie cannot be the one to grab the baby, even though he would be much faster than Hackleswell. He cannot due to it going against the granted wish. As all this is happening, the witch is trying to calm down the baby and begins walking away slowly with the baby still in her arms. Right when Hackleswell begins walking slowly behind the witch to try and take the baby, the witch quickly turns around. "Oh yes, our deal," she yells out. With the baby still in her arms, she walks up to the candle, leans forward, and blows out the flame. At that very moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of relief. So much so that he began to feel very sleepy, most likely due to his long-standing insomnia. He tries to walk towards the witch, but his legs felt heavy, and his eyes began to slowly close. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot stay awake long enough to take the child out of the arms of the witch. He then falls forward and passes out in exhaustion on the floor in the witch's lair. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and happy gaming, everyone. Bye.